Hi there, my name's Gary Burke from 3111 West Torreys Peak Drive. There's an item that I'd like to discuss, which I think I brought up about 6 months ago. First of all, great job on the new park, by the way, right there on the property and the lot. It's fantastic. I couldn't say much better things about it. And great job on reducing the speed limit there as well, because that will really keep down the number of occurrences. We've got a slightly different issue now. I sent a photo about 6 months ago. Hopefully, I don't know if you've got a copy of it in your email. I think Kevin may have sent this around. But effectively, when you drive up that road at certain times, the sun actually crescents right at the top, and you cannot see a thing. So the park, before the park, less of an issue. Now with the park, people are parking on both sides of the road. The sun crescents right there. You can't see a thing. I mean, and I took a photo with a filter on, so you could actually see the sun being there. Otherwise, to the naked eye, you slow down to the point where you're literally trying to go like this to find out if there's anything in front of you or not. That's a hazard. Hazard for a number of reasons, more than any else as far as I'm concerned. Kids are going to cross and they run across going to the park. So if I can't see them at 5, 6 o'clock when I'm driving back from work, that's a real issue. Now, 6 months ago I brought that up. I know you've looked at it and you considered it, and I don't have any answers for you, by the way, so I'm not going to confess that I do. But there's an issue with cars parking on both sides when you can't see. 6 months ago, that was an issue with the sun. About a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a school bus hit a vehicle's wing mirror right outside when I was cutting the lawn. That was a school bus going in the opposite direction, avoiding two vehicles so that they could get through the gap between two cars. And it hit a wing mirror. I ask that this, effectively all of you guys find a solution. I'm happy to contribute if there's room for discussion. But as far as I see it, there's a few different options. We either do something about it and take some action now, because we can. We wait and see what happens, or we live in hindsight and regret because something horrible happened. And that's all I got for you. So I'd like you to take that in consideration.
Thanks. Hey, Gary, quick question. When we were leaving the neighborhood, I noticed that they parked, that it's painted red. Alex, I don't know how long it's been painted red right outside the entrance to the park. So it appears to be no parking right by the entrance there. It's only about a 15, 20-foot curb paint. Does that indicate no parking, and is that something new that we've done? It's the park. It's the pedestrian park entrance right on West Torreys.
It might have been done by Parks. I haven't done anything recently, but Parks might have done that as in conjunction with the park opening.
Okay.
But I'll check that out. I'll research this issue and come back with some different options.
But
limits.
it would be helpful to look at options, and maybe in the interim, if we could confirm that red is in fact no parking, and maybe even extend that red out
red's
a
no
little
parking,
bit.
and we can extend that, put no parking signs to reinforce that in that area where that crossing is. Or
That'd be great. That would be perfect. I think that would address a big part of the safety concern here while we study other options.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just to reinforce, I think the issue is more because the kids do actually feel safer on that road because it's slowed down. The problem is when school's out, the signs are flashing, everyone slows down. When school's not out, the kids are still using the park.
Mm-hmm.
And all they're used to is running across the road.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can either stop the kids or we can stop the adults. I know where my money goes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Is there other public comment?
Good evening. I'm Robert Momartz. I'm a citizen here of Superior for about 20 years. Wanted to make a couple of comments about the 88th Street corridor, if I might. Is this the right time for that?
Sure.
In 2010, we did a volume study, and it showed 8,500 cars per day. 5 years later, it was over 10,000. And the projection at that time, at 2010, for 2035 was 11,000 cars. We're almost at that point now, and we're 18 years ahead of schedule, so to speak. living in Saddlebrook, I'm very familiar with what 88th Street does in terms of how much processing of cars, but basically you've got 1 mile from Rock Creek Parkway and 88th to Campus Drive, where you have the hospital and the high school. And for all practical purposes, the overpass is halfway. And my concern is every time you increase access to 88th Street, whether it be developing property like Zaharias or something else, you're adding to the load. And I think that we've got to look at further down the line in terms of how we're going to deal with 88th Street so that everything drains properly. If traffic gets tied up there, it's going to be a bear. And in that regard, I don't know if this is premature, but I think a traffic light at Weldona would be a disaster. Thank you.
Is there any more public comment? Yes.
Daryl McCool, and I want to thank you guys for tackling some really tough issues. Transportation around town is really difficult, and it's only going to get harder, so appreciate your efforts for that. I will not be here for the July meeting for Coal Creek Drive. I'm not going to talk about that so much now, but I did have an idea in terms of all the cut-through traffic, and that's one of the topics you're going to be talking about for Weldona. Education. We, after the last Transportation and Safety Committee meeting where we talked about cut-through traffic, people came up to me and said, I had no idea how I was impacting people by driving through and cutting through neighborhoods. And I think an education program is really cost-effective. It's not going to hurt us to try and do it and help educate people on what it means when they don't stop at stop signs, when they do stop at stop signs and then floor it off of the stop sign so that their engines roar into our homes. There's just a lot that could be done for very little in terms of education that I think would help people. It's pretty simple for our street. Let's not go to the marketplace going up Coal Creek Drive. I'm not sure how we solve the Weldona issue. I know Riverbend, people go up Riverbend all the time to try and avoid traffic lights. So education might help, and then also looking at why are people cutting through? How do we fix the other intersections so that we don't have all of these problems, especially as we add 1,400 new residents to our town. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more public comment? Okay. Let's move on to the big discussion, options for Weldona.
Okay, my name is Alex Arenello. I'm Director of Public Works, and I believe most of you got a notice of this meeting in the survey forms. I know there was some issues with some people not getting them, and we tried to address that on Friday, and I apologize that you may not have gotten the notice, but we got, I think, we're up to 99 responses, so we got quite a few. Just some background, the speeding and cut-through traffic have been issues on Weldona probably for over 20 years. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so speeding and any better? I can turn up the microphone in there. We can get you a little bit higher level. Okay. So back in the 1990s, I think the Rock Creek Metro District actually did some studies, and they were the ones that recommended to the town that they install the two stop signs at Elmora and Idalia. And that went on for a while. In the 2005-2006 period, the issue was raised again, and the town board looked at various issues, and they actually tried a temporary closure over at Akron Place over on that side. That was in place for a couple months, and then the town board decided to remove that. But it's been a long-standing problem, we know, in terms of traffic, cut-through traffic, speeding, and so forth. So this is the area. We can come back to this if you guys want to talk about where you live and so forth. But this is the area north of Rock Creek Parkway that we sent out the notice. So this is kind of the area of concern, and obviously the Waldona people are most impacted, but there are a lot of people that use that to get to 88th to get to various destinations. Some traffic numbers. These numbers are traffic counts were taken in 2015, and they're daily traffic volumes. So if you think about putting a tube across the street, you're counting traffic in both directions. So it's a sum of traffic in both directions. You can see here the traffic on 88th is very high, 10,400. On Coal Creek, it's about 1,700. Rock Creek Parkway has traffic 6,800 here, but it's about 10,000 down by Colton. On Waldona, we did take a count in 2015. It was just under 1,200. We had some other traffic count data back in 2006, just east of Adalia. It was counted at 676. And then this year, earlier at Akron, the count was 655. And
Alex, what time of the year was this study done?
Okay, so these were taken in the spring. School was in session for the 2015 counts were all taken in the spring during when school's in session, so we make sure we have counted the school traffic. The count in 2006 was also taken in May when school was in session. This count in 2017 was taken in January, second week in January, and school was in session there.
Thank you.
For some safety data, we collect accidents and I believe, over a 5-year period. We had 8 accidents in the area of Waldona and 88th. We had 1 or 2 on Waldona and 1 near Akron during that 5-year period. So TSC wanted to discuss this. Town board, I think, wants to take up this issue. They want to hear from the neighborhood. And so we decided to send out a survey form, sent that out in May of this year, May 19th, to over 400 households. We did find out some of the people in Waldona didn't get it, so we went and hand-delivered to all the houses along Waldona Way and Waldona Lane on Friday, and we got a number of responses over the weekend and up till about 5 o'clock today. So we tried to incorporate all those in the memo that we have. And by the way, if you haven't gotten, there's a cover memo, and there's also a map that kind of depicts the responses and where people live.
Alex, quickly on the households that didn't get it, are you certain that the survey went out to all 400 households via mail, U.S. mail? Is that how it went
U.S.
out?
mail. We took the addresses from our utility billing data, from our utility billing records. And
Okay.
I can't be sure that they all got them. We didn't ask for a return to registered
Right.
mail, but we got responses from that whole.
Okay. I'm wondering in the future, and I don't mean to derail the meeting, but in the future maybe we get a look at what that's going to look like, because sometimes you get a lot of junk mail, and some of the letters look like junk mail and they just get thrown out.
Right.
So I think we should probably come up with a good envelope that makes it look, it's official town business and we really need your input on it.
Yes.
Instead of some marketing firm.
Right, and we thought about doing Survey Monkey, but whether everybody has access to it, does the word get out to everybody? So, yeah, it's definitely something that the staff, and I don't normally do that, so
Okay.
I apologize for not getting to everybody. I'll go over the results in a few minutes, the actual tabulation of results, but the survey had 4 options on the survey form, and it also asked for other, and so we got a lot of comments for other ideas. So I want to just go through the options and just give you my sense of the cost of these options and some of the effectiveness and some other parameters. And I'm certainly, you guys will have your chance to come up and speak to those particular options. So the first option was to close Waldona at 88th Street, on the 88th Street end. The cost of doing that would be about, just a temporary closure would be about $10,000 to throw up some concrete barriers and do some signing and so forth. But I did want give you some costs maybe for a permanent closure, because I don't think you want just concrete barriers sticking up there forever. I think if you're going to close the road, you probably want to remove some asphalt, to do some landscaping, and to make it look like the road doesn't go through. So a permanent closure could cost $40,000 to $80,000 if you did it, and we work with the neighborhood on that design. One reason why we suggested 88th and Waldona is that we are getting accidents. We had 7 accidents at that intersection over the last 5 years. So by closing it at that point, we essentially eliminate those accidents because you're not turning onto or off of 88th. So that's one argument for closing it on that end. Similar options that were suggested by a lot of people were close Waldona on the Akron side of it, like we did the temporary closure that was done several years ago, or close it somewhere in the middle. And actually doing it in the middle does have the benefits that you still maintain 2 ways out of the neighborhood, and maybe you distribute the traffic along Waldona so that you're not, all locations along Waldona probably have a drop in traffic. So that's Waldona. I have put this up in case you want to come up and refer to it later on. Second
Alex,
option.
Where was the previous temporary closure?
Okay, it was. This is Akron, so I think they just put the concrete barriers right across here. And if the board, I do have some sketches for what this would look like, how that was implemented, and then we did have an option for making this a cul-de-sac and putting a little cul-de-sac here. That was another option that was looked at.
So we've never, as a town, attempted a temporary closure off at 88th?
No.
We've only done one off Coal Creek?
No. Okay. Second option was to make the Waldona 88th Street right turns only, and you could accomplish that either by putting a little pork chop island in, which sometimes is not very effective, but that could be done for $15,000 or so with some signing and striping. But to do it on a permanent basis and make it very effective, you'd probably need a median on 88th Street. So that's what the higher cost for more permanent right turn only configuration. So you'd have to widen the road a little bit, put a median so you couldn't turn right. It will reduce the accidents at 88th and Waldona. I'm not sure if it'll eliminate all of them because you still have right turns in and right turns out. The third option was to construct raised pedestrian crossings or speed humps along Waldona. And there is one trail that comes into Waldona. Yeah, this trail right here that comes in, this would be a natural place to put a raised pedestrian crossing. There are some difficulties here because that's right where we have inlets on both sides of the road, so that would entail some special design features, a little more expensive than a typical raised crossing. So that crossing would cost $30,000 to $40,000. If you wanted to put speed humps, the advantage of speed humps are that they don't go totally across the roadway. They're just kind of in the center of the roadway, so they're not affecting drainage. They're not, blocking the drainage, and also it's easier for parked vehicles. So all along the south side of Waldona are driveways, a bunch of driveways and a bunch of parked vehicles. So with a raised pedestrian vehicle, if it goes across the entire roadway, then you're having to park right in that area where it's going up and down or on the crossing. So speed humps do have some application here that they don't go across the whole roadway. Probably less expensive, and about $10,000 to $15,000 per hump. And you probably need 3 or 4 speed humps to make it effective.
Is that the same as a speed table? Oh, yeah, speed table or speed hump, same
Right,
thing.
same
But
thing.
a speed bump goes all the way from curb to curb?
A raised pedestrian crossing would go. The humps are more coming up, gradual basis and then kind of humped. A pedestrian crossing would be flat on top, 8 or 10 feet of flat area where pedestrians would walk, bicycles would walk.
Okay.
So the raised tables are more for pedestrians to use as well.
And then in the item 3, it says town discourages use of vertical traffic calming measures. That would, so humps and bumps and
Right.
tables and all that you guys are opposed to.
Right, tables I think were more, they have the effect of protecting pedestrians. They give pedestrians more visibility. They really demarcate where, pedestrians should cross. So I think we have a number of those around town. We have very few speed humps, if any, that I know of.
Okay.
There's also other thing, with speed humps, there have noise to them because you're going to come and hit that bump if you're going too fast. You're going to hit that. You may get airborne. You may get vehicle damage. So there
Once.
Once.
Okay.
And they may also have issues with emergency vehicles.
Yeah, what's the issues when they have to get somewhere fast? Then
Right, they want to go as fast as they can.
yeah,
So another version of speed humps are called speed cushions, where you actually put openings in the speed humps at the width of a fire truck. So a fire truck can go through the speed humps and not have to go up and over. They can go straight, but they're too wide for a passenger vehicle. Passenger vehicle can only use one of the openings, can't use both of them.
okay.
So it's another version.
What about snow plows and all? Because we have speed bumps or humps elsewhere around the town. What about you snow plows on the roads with those?
Well, they have to negotiate them like they do the raised pedestrian crossings. I mean, they hit them,
Yeah.
but they've been able to work around them. It hasn't been that big an issue.
Yeah. Oh, I'd have to believe. I mean, we wouldn't be the only town in the snowy climate that has speed bumps. So they've had to have perfected the
Yeah,
building those things so that snow plows
right,
can
and they're
go
not,
over 'em without.
speed bumps are what you see in shopping centers. They're smaller.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They're the ones that hurt. The speed humps that the traffic engineering community are designed to, gradual to have maybe 20, 25 mile an hour design speed where you can safely negotiate them, and they slow traffic down, but they don't really damage your vehicles.
And then where else in town do we have speed humps? I mean, we have something similar in town, right?
Similar. Most of them are the raised pedestrian crossings.
Okay, and do we have complaints or issues with those, with snow plows or emergency vehicles or?
Not really.
Okay. Okay.
One question here. Could you clarify,
That's-
usually you don't put the humps right where the stop signs are, you put them in between the stop signs, right? That's why you're concerned about parking is because the speed humps would be midway between the two stop signs and midway between the next two stop signs.
Yeah, that's correct, and I haven't gotten that far in thinking about, well, if we put speed humps in, are we going to take the stop signs out? But
Are you thinking of taking the
no,
stop signs
no,
out?
no, I'm not saying.
So a couple,
where I would put 'em,
just,
what I would-
hey, Alex, from a procedural standpoint, I think it's important that we let Alex go through the presentation. There will be ample time for public comment, and then the other observation for those that are watching at home now or may later, it's important that we use the microphone. So please, if we could just hold our comments and questions
Yes.
until Alex
And,
gets through.
and when you get up to the podium, identify yourself and where you live. Yes. Okay. So other options that were suggested, and I wanted to give you some information on those, install a traffic signal at 88th and Waldona, and a typical traffic signal. The difference between these, the fifth one is they install a traffic signal at Coal Creek and Rock Creek Parkway. The difference of cost here is that Waldona and 88th is a three-legged intersection versus a four-legged intersection at Coal Creek and Rock Creek Parkway. And also 88th is not as wide. I mean, Waldona is not as wide as Coal Creek is. So you'd have a higher cost at Coal Creek and Rock Creek Parkway. So those are the costs. At 88th and Waldona, I actually think that could increase traffic on Waldona because now you're providing a way to safely enter 88th, and people that are discouraged now in the morning to use Waldona because they can't get out may end up using it now because they know they would get a light to get out onto 88th. The Coal Creek Rock Creek Parkway traffic signal, I think a number of people said, well, if you close Waldona, you got to do something at Coal Creek and Rock Creek Parkway because that would be the alternate route. And so I think that's something to consider. Not only when you close Waldona, you may have to do something at Coal Creek and Rock Creek Parkway. Another interesting suggestion was number 6 here: install cameras at Waldona stop signs and issue tickets for running the stop signs. And it's, I guess, similar to red light running, but I haven't seen an installation where you use it for stop sign running. And how do you get a trigger? How do you know that someone's run that stop sign? Do you look at the tape, 24 hours of tape to see if they ran it? Do you have some way of figuring out, because people are going through, did they stop or not? How are you going to trigger that and come up? So I have some technical issues on how we would implement that. And I'm not sure if I've ever seen that type of installation. Number 7 was install a gate at Waldona Akron and issue cards or key codes to residents, so you only have residents use the gate. Costs are in the range of $30,000 to $50,000. There's ongoing maintenance and administration costs. Those gates get hit, so you got to go out there periodically and replace gates and so forth. Another variant of this is you could just put up a gate that's self-operated, and it serves as a traffic calming feature. You got to stop, wait for the gate to open, and then go through. It also deters people from going through. They see a gate, well, maybe I can't go through. So I've seen that used in other places. Up at Waterford, we have, that's how it operates now. There's a gate there, but anybody can go through. So it's certainly an option that's been used in other places. 8 is to paint stop in the street at the stop signs to reinforce the fact that you should stop. It's a fairly low-cost measure. 9 is to install speed radar signs, and they've been effective in other locations. We do have them around the town. They cost about $7,000 per sign. 10 was get the sheriff out there more to patrol, and I was hoping the sheriff was going to be here tonight, but he did call me, and he's on a bomb scare or whatever, some thing that he had to attend to. Finally, reduce the speed limit to 15 miles per hour, fairly low cost, but it's inconsistent with all the speed limits throughout town. We normally have 25 miles an hour throughout town, so this will be a lower speed limit that we have in other parts of town. So that's pretty much the summary. So here's the summary of the survey results, and I want to caution here is that we just said check a box. Well, a lot of people check more than one box. A lot of people rank ordered them. A lot of people had other, and we tried to capture as many comments we can for the other comments. But we did, the number of responses were all the boxes that checked. So if you checked 2 or 3 boxes, they got recorded. So it's the best way we could do that. So that's the summary I had, and that's pretty much my presentation. We do have, let me explain this map. So we attempted to give you a map of where the responses were coming from. It was hard to color code these because a lot of people had more than one response. But the red items, of course, along Waldona, that's where a lot of the reds are. And then the check mark is no change, like things the way they are. We put the speed humps as green. We had restrict to right turn only as the yellow. And then there were other combinations. So we tried to capture all those in some sort of color-coded way. But it was difficult to do. So that's where the responses came from. We got, obviously, the Waldona and this area here was obviously more impacted than the others, and we got a lot more responses from those areas.
Okay.
Okay.
So on the cut-through traffic, Is it safe to assume that the cut-through traffic is coming from like Monarch High School and going up Weldona to the opposite side of Coal Creek Drive? Is that where the cut-through traffic
In the morning,
is?
and probably the opposite in the evening.
You're saying also in the morning coming from the opposite side of Coal Creek?
No, in the afternoon coming
yeah.
back.
Right. I would agree with that. I used to be one of those cut-through people. We would do carpool duty, and it was just easier to go down until we got to 88th Street, and it was just so hard to get across. We quit doing that. We'd start going down Coal Creek Drive. So I can't imagine in the morning that that's the big issue, but I could see the issue in the afternoon that it's really easy to go up Weldona and just go on the opposite side of Coal Creek Drive if that's where you live. So, okay. Okay.
Alex, can you talk about the speed data and your observations in the speed within the 85th percentile and the data you have around that?
Okay, so as you noticed, we did a speed trailer out there a few weeks ago, and they collect data, and we provided the board graphs of the speed data for all the days that it was out there. But basically, the way traffic engineers like to set speed limits, if you look at the 85th percentile speed, that means that 85% of people that travel at that speed or below is a prudent speed limit to set the traffic. Most people are prudent and travel at a reasonable speed. So the 85th percentile is the measure we use to make sure that to look at how to set speed limits. So that the 85th percentile speeds range, depending on day, from 21 to 29 miles an hour, depending on the sample. So some days it was lower, actually lower the speed limit. And if you think we have stop signs through there, and one thing I don't know is that when that data is picked up, because it's pointing several hundred feet, so does it take the highest speed or what speed? I'll find out. We're trying to figure out how that works, but it's the highest speed. Speeds are varying if you're stopping at the stop signs. So some days it was as low as 21, other days it was as high as 29. And then we also had all the data on the outliers, and we clocked, the higher speeds. So we got speeds in the 30s. I don't think we got up to 40, but we had some speeds in the 30s. And so all that data was provided to me.
I should have asked you this in advance because I'm not sure you're going to have the answer to it. But in terms of tickets or enforcement, do you have the data? Can you speak to? And I know the sheriff is that Sergeant Chamberlain's not here, but speak to the data that you may have around tickets and speeders that have been in that area, whether or not it's average from the rest of the community.
Well, I
or
want to put words in the sheriff's mouth, but he's commented to me and the town manager on past, yes, they've been out there, they've looked, but they don't catch anybody. Now, again, it looks at, if you're out there in a car, it's pretty visible, and so people, it's not like you can hide out there. So when there's a car out there, people tend not to blow the stop sign. So it's been hard for him to write a lot of citations because once he's out there, people see him. So he hasn't. I don't think he's written many citations out there. But I know he does patrol, and despite you don't see him, but he's out there patrolling.
So you don't know about citations for blowing through the stop sign, or what about speeding?
I think there haven't been many of either.
So these almost seem like two separate issues to talk about, because it'd be interesting if there were a lot of speeding tickets without identifying any one individual where they live. It'd be nice to understand if they live in that subdivision where there's 400 homes, or if they're living on the other side of Rock Creek Drive. Because if they're all living within that area of Weldona and those are the speeders, then it doesn't matter if you block it off or you do some of the other things, they're still going to speed.
Right.
But if 75% of the speeders are living on the other side of Rock Creek Parkway, well, then maybe there's another argument for limiting the traffic on Weldona. So I don't know if there's any way to find that out, but
He has all his records, so I'm sure he can provide any citations that were issued in this area.
Have we done other, so I liked the comment that Darrell made around education programs. First, there's an option out there of do nothing, and for me, do nothing is not an option, right? At a minimum, we need to increase enforcement, we need to have better education, and we could send some kids out there with some sidewalk chalk to paint stop on the street. Like, I think that should be done immediately. If you think that's going to help folks stop, and so long as it's not an eyesore, anything we could do around that.
I think there's some merit to those measures. We just have a small staff. We don't have a traffic control unit that we can go out there, but I'm sure we can investigate some of those measures and see if they're applicable here. I think Darrell made a good point.
Right.
That education would.
I've seen in other I don't think I've seen it in our neighborhood in Superior, but I've seen in other neighborhoods the signs drive like your kids live here.
Yes.
Right. And that presumably is some type of community action. There's no reason why we shouldn't be doing something like that today. I'm not a big fan of those signs everywhere, but at a minimum, if the education is going to help, I think it's important.
Sure, we'd be willing to look into those types of measures.
Yeah. And the other, and I'm eager to sort of turn it over for public comment, but as we look at the data are really helpful, and thanks for the survey, for getting the survey out there. There's a couple things that when you look at the map, things that jump out at you. First, the response rate is obviously much higher on Weldona and goes down significantly as you go out into the periphery. And then there are, folks that are obviously directly on Weldona feel more strongly than the other neighborhoods about the other streets, about a closure, where others feel more strongly about either a do nothing or alternative options. What was the total? Remind me how many, I think you said this. How many, we got 99 back. How many surveys went out?
About a little over 400, and 99 came back.
Okay.
I'd like to hear from the public. Okay. Public comment? And if you could just announce your name and where you live for the record.
Neil Shaw. I live off of Idalia, right there. So we moved in 2010. It's been about 7 years. I brought my daughter here because, and Alex, you brought up a lot of key points here, and I want to go back to a lot of those. I don't let her walk on. She can't ride her bike on the street because we live on the corner. And you come around this corner, and where you set the speed trap was down here, really close to 88th. And everyone's already slowing down over there because they have to hit the stop sign at 88th. But they come barreling around this corner and slam their brakes on at Idalia. So this is my biggest point of concern, is the volume and the speed at this early corner, because it's a blind turn. Folks come careening around that corner, and she's here because I wanted her to see the process. I've yelled at her many times to just get the hell out of the street because it's a frightful corner for me as a father. And if you look at our neighborhood, there are no kids that play on this street. They're terrified. And I think the most important thing is to go back to the volume data. The speeds are, I don't think too many people speed. It's the volume of traffic. And if you compare Weldona to other arterials around the town, it's significantly higher. It's on par with what I look very quickly to some of the main arterials for the street as opposed to a residential street. I mean, this is a residential street. There's driveways here. I feel really bad for these houses over here. They have a tough time getting out of their driveway in the morning because of the backup along here. And you guys brought up a couple of great points, because in the morning, there are a lot of people trying to turn out here, and in the evening, there's a lot of people trying to come back. In spite of the fact, Mr. Hanson, that you don't go down this path anymore, a lot of folks still use it to go north in the morning. So I just wanted to get that out there, that the speed data is great, but it's pretty close to 88th. Everyone's slowing down. The sheriffs often, they sat in this corner here. Everyone could see them from, in every direction. And I appreciate them going out there. Unfortunately, unless they're sitting without a car, everyone's going to see them, and it's really easy to kind of just manage your speed. The other thing is with the speed trap thing, everyone starts slowing down pretty close because as soon as they see it, they know they need to slow down. So I think that the survey data is fantastic, but the one question I have is why do these people get to vote? And I ask that for the very simple reason. There's a big sign on both ends of Weldona that says local traffic only. And yet, I know hundreds of people that live up here, around town, they drive through there because they think it's okay. The local traffic only sign is obscured by trees and completely ignored. It's not an arterial, it's a residential street. If we're going to use it as an arterial, then that's fine. But folks down here, around there, getting a vote, that's great that the survey went to them. I feel that a vote from someone who lives a half mile away maybe doesn't have the same bearing as somebody who lives on the street itself. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Mike Jaramillo, and I live on Boyero Court right here. And last year we had a couple instances with allergic reactions with my kids, and the time to get to Avista High School, or Avista Hospital, was critical. A couple more seconds and my daughter would have been in anaphylactic shock, and it would have been a difficult thing to get through, and maybe she wouldn't have got through it. So having the outlet for our children coming this way with a daughter who has allergic reactions is something that we definitely need to consider, because the time to come back around and back out through Rock Creek would have not provided enough time, according to her ER physician. So it's definitely, I appreciate, and I definitely have the same concerns as the traffic, because I have two small children who ride their bikes on Weldona, and it does make me nervous. But it's also, we have to consider the time that it would take our family to get around to the hospital. So that's all I have to say about our children.
Hello, my name is Mark Commander. I live at 1260 South Boyero Court, right here. And I've been here 23 years, and I've seen traffic on 88th grow and grow and grow. And you hear it, you see it. But that is the main problem with Weldona. It's either you can't get on 88th because Weldona is backed up, because 88th is backed up, or if you can get on, you're cutting through because you're trying to get someplace. Now, this intersection used to be easy. You could get on at any time of the day. You go there, right turn, left turn, whatever. Now, at school times, impossible. Just about any rest of the time of the day, no problem again. So it's the volume at that time of the day that's critical. And that's not going to change, especially when 88th is blocked off, essentially, at the bridge. We have 2 lanes. We had 2 lanes on the old bridge. We got 2 lanes now. We haven't improved since the very first bridge. You increase the width there, you might have a chance on alleviating the congestion on 88th, because you're not going to reduce the volume on 88th. The volume on 88th is only going to keep getting bigger and bigger, and there's nowhere for it to go. All the right turn people that are going on to Monarch High School are backed up in the 1 lane, over the bridge, past Weldona, down to Coyote Crossing, and down to Reliance Circle. And that's just the way it is. And you're not going to stop it by, cutting this off. You're not going to stop 88th traffic, but you're going to have everybody from here going past the Weldona people. I appreciate their concerns, but I don't go by their house now. I come out and go to work. If it's blocked off here, you're going to have me coming across their houses at 5:30 in the morning, just like the paperboy. So that's not really a solution. And the right in, right out, not a solution either, because people coming here will still cut through. It doesn't stop them from cutting through. It just keeps people from coming this way from getting home. So the right turn in and right turn out really is a bad solution. Cutting us off from our access to 88th is not a solution. Traffic mitigation along Weldona may be a solution for cutting down the speed, maybe some of the volume, but until you actually deal with the problem of 88th and the future increase of traffic for whatever ends up being over here in the Prairie Dog pasture,
they're not going to be able to get onto 88th because it's already full. So if you don't put something in there that allows for that expansion, you can't really fit the traffic. So 88th has got to get wider, but it can't get wider right now because you got a bridge there. It's only 2 lanes. Thank you very much.
My name is Chris Malsby. I live at 1464 East Waldona Way. We've lived there since 1993. We're the original owners. When we moved into the neighborhood, it was very quiet, very peaceful, very little traffic moving through the neighborhood. I had 2 boys. It was a nice place for the kids to play. They rode their bikes and played with all their friends in the neighborhood. Progressively, it got busier and busier. It became a shortcut when Monarch was built. For the kids to cut through. It's a shortcut. People that are taking a shortcut aren't going that way because it's a scenic route. They're trying to get there faster. So it's not only the speed, but it's the volume. We've got people coming through there by the thousands. It's noisy. A lot of our homes, our bedrooms face the street. The stop signs have done nothing but cause people to be aggravated. They hate the stop signs. They either don't stop, they barely slow down, or they gun it from one stop sign to the other. And a lot of the kids show total disregard for the way they drive through our neighborhood. There's also commuters that cut through our neighborhood that are on their way to work, and they're also in a hurry. They're trying to get to work. They're not wanting to stop or go slow through our neighborhood. It's not their consideration. I think that the speed humps are going to not do much of anything to reduce the volume. There's still going to be people cutting through our neighborhood. I don't see those as solutions. The stop signs had little or no effect. If anything, it made it worse. It's going to have to be limited at one end or the other to actually address the flow of traffic. It's only going to get worse. Trying to slow people down is kind of a Band-Aid. It's not fixing the problem. We'd be happy with people from this little neighborhood driving down our street. We've got thousands of people going through our street now. If we have these people drive by, that's the least of our problems. That was what we had originally, was very acceptable. Like a lot of people that lived here, I'm in favor of shutting it off. It's not a big inconvenience to drive around. It's something that I think most of my neighbors and myself find very acceptable. It's about the only thing that's going to return the quality of life on Waldona Way. I think all these other things are just kind of Band-Aids. They're not really solutions. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Hi, I'm Rita Kadich. I live at 1278 South El Moro Court. So that is right here. We purchased our house there 2 years ago. To give you a little background around myself, I do have a 2.5-year-old daughter and a baby on the way, so I understand the concerns of people with children. I do want to bring up a few points that have not necessarily been discussed. So first of all, when it was talked about how the survey was distributed, all of the households in this area got the survey, and then it was pointed out that yesterday the survey was hand-delivered to all people on Waldona. So that is weighting the survey to the respondents to people on Waldona had a second opportunity to respond, whereas last weekend when I was at our block party on El Moro Court, one person that I talked to had known about the survey, and it was this one. And then this person responded also. So I do want you to just take into consideration that the survey results are weighted towards the people who received the survey twice. When I have talked to people who are concerned about Waldona Way and why traffic will increase, they were pointing out that this end of Coal Creek will go up into the downtown area, and therefore people will be cutting through more to go to the downtown. But I had been under the impression from the other city planning materials that we had received that this would also be access to the new downtown Superior. So to me, why would someone cut through a neighborhood where they have to go slow speeds, where instead they could just take this direct access route right along US 36, a marginal type of road? So that argument doesn't seem to me to explain why traffic will materially increase. Additionally, in the survey that was, or in the paperwork that was originally sent out, it was discussed how for the last temporary closure, after a 3-month trial period, there was little decrease in traffic volume and speeds on Weldona Way. So we closed this end. There was no material impact. To me, it doesn't make sense to close this end and expect there to be a big change. To the comment that everyone sees the police, living right here, I'll testify that I see the police parked right here very frequently, watching the stop signs and watching the road. I see them because I live across the street from it. These people who are driving here do not see this police car parked right here. And then something that has not come up in this discussion yet is property value. We bought our house because it has easy access to Louisville. It has easy access to Boulder. Our daughter goes to daycare right off of Dillon Road. She'll go to school at Monarch High School. We go in and out of this end of Weldona to 88th about 6 times a day. There are 2 of us with 2 cars and work and daycare drop-offs. Our house alone will add 6 cars going the other direction. There are, I think I counted correctly, about 50 cars from this, about 50 houses from this side on. If everyone only even has 4 car trips, this neighborhood traffic alone, assuming that only these people go out 88th, this part of the traffic alone will add 200 trips out the other side, assuming only 4 ins or outs. Our access to Louisville is part of our property value. We have the Louisville access without the Louisville price. Our house across the highway, $100,000 more. It's going to affect so many properties, and do we really want to affect our property value by making ourselves cut off from the rest of the, well, cut off from the things that we all go and do? I'll let everyone else speak, but please do take some of these points into consideration. I did also send an email that I asked Alan to pass along. Thank you.
I'm Dulcie Brown. I live on Weldona Way. I don't think the survey was weighted. I didn't get one, and I know 4 neighbors next to me did not get one. So I came up here and spoke to the town and said, I just heard about it. Neil's wife had gotten one only because they didn't get one, but her parents got one who live in the neighborhood and said, hey, I got the survey. So I know they didn't get one. Some other people down the street didn't get one. I didn't get one, so it was not a weighted survey. I asked for them to send it out to people on Weldona Way because I knew a number of people who did not get it. As far as property value goes, I think living on Weldona Way, my property value would go up. People look for no traffic, got kids, who wants to live on a busy street? My property value would go up if you close off 88th Street. I'm trying to think. I think there were some other things. I don't remember. But, and as far as saying more people driving out in front of us, I'm good with these people driving out in front of us. I mean, it would reduce it by probably 600-700 vehicles a day, just these people driving down Weldona Way, as opposed to all of those people, Amherst people, coming out this way, people coming in from Monarch, going through that way. So I'd be real happy with closing off anywhere. I don't care whether it's 88, I don't care whether it's Akron, I don't care whether it's cul-de-sac, just close it off someplace.
My name is William Anderson. I live at 1325 South Boyer Court. I was one of those who marked the alternative do nothing, not realizing that's not an option. One of the things, of course, what was I thinking? One of the things that I know, of course, where we are here, we want access to 88th. So that's why I said do nothing, which is not an option. One of the things that was not presented was an option to stop traffic down at the other end. And I wonder if some of the folks here along Waldona would have gone, who would still like to have access, would have liked it blocked down at this end. So I'm not sure why this was not presented as an option. I don't know. Because it sounds like the folks along here just want it blocked one end or the other. And for us, access to 88th is important. As the one gentleman said, access to the hospital. So I'm not, I'm not in favor of blocking it down here at Waldona, this end by 88th. So, and the other thing I was curious about, the town, does the town has plans for building roads from this new town center over to 88th? Would that alleviate some of the problem as far as cutting through? I don't know. I'm not sure. That was a question I had.
That's to be determined. There's been a lot of discussion for many options there, but that's something that'll come before us at a later date.
Okay. Well, anyway, as I said over here, for us, access to 88th is important. So that's my point. Thank you.
Bill, the code word for that, so that's the Anderson property. I believe we will see a application this summer.
Okay.
And so please do look for that, because that application by the developer will address some roads and access point there. So
thanks.
Hey all, thanks for taking the time to listen to folks in the area and get all the wide variety of opinions. I've been a resident in the neighborhood for 8 years, 7 years of those on Amherst. Now live on the southern end off Riverbend between Coal Creek and 88th. So was a guilty party as a cut-througher for a number of years, taking my kids to the Monarch schools. So that being said, philosophically, I always agree more connections are better. I have a really hard time. I don't live on Waldona, so, it's recognizing, getting up and sharing my opinion impacts their quality of life. But fundamentally, more connections in a community are better. And I think we're seeing the result of kind of some unintended consequences in the community design here. We were chatting in the back and wondering, all the folks up on Amherst might come down with pitchforks, but potentially if you opened that up through to 88th, how that might potentially relieve.
Can you point that out? Because
that would be a connection.
That's exactly. I wrote that on my thing here.
So it would be an engineering challenge. I mean, you've got a pretty big pond there, and I don't know that the appropriate time, again, recognizing probably getting some pitchforks. I used to live on Amherst. Totally understand. But it would potentially balance and distribute that traffic a little more. Just throwing an idea out there. You guys can throw spitballs at me when I walk by. But more connections are better, and I do think that until we see how traffic comes through with this potential Anderson application, we might not have all the information that we need to have a good understanding of how traffic is going to be flowing through here in the kind of relatively near future. So I would encourage maybe a more temporary solution if we do need to do a solution. Speed humps, something that isn't going to, I think, fundamentally alter traffic flow. And then also just remind folks to think about unintended consequences. We stop traffic in one place, it will go somewhere else. It doesn't go away. So I think just understanding kind of what those impacts might be, one choice leads to another, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Alex, can we come up with another name besides speed hump? I'm not real fond of that. Got to have a better name.
Speed Hill.
Speed Hill. That's better than speed hump.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Duckerhoff, and I live on Mesa Court. So I guess I'm a cut-througher. I've lived here since 1999, and so I've had a lot of experience with it both ways. Just as a point of humor, because sometimes that helps in these situations. When it was closed off, first time, which was right here, by the way, it wasn't at the street. It was the other side of Coal Creek. Within a day, there was a basketball hoop up there. They had their own court. It was great, So they knew it was coming when that barrier went across. I do have concerns. There are people that I know that have not had the opportunity to respond to the survey, so there is that factor. And with all due respect to the gentleman that had an issue with his daughter, I'm very glad that she had a good outcome with that. We would never want any of the actions that we're taking here this evening to adversely affect the health of any citizen in Rock Creek. From a personal point of reference, I will also tell you that I had the wonderful opportunity to take an ambulance ride. And guess where? They went through Waldona. And you know what? I appreciated the fact that they could get there, as will any of the other residents that are no longer allowed access through there. Regarding the traffic signals, I think that you're got to be planning on the fact that when Coal Creek opens up to our town, to the new area, there's going to have to be a stoplight here. I can't imagine otherwise. In the meantime, we're going to be asking everybody to come down here, make a left turn onto Rock Creek Parkway, which is always the most dangerous type of a negotiation in traffic, is to turn left. Go around the traffic circle, and I think that you showed that had the greatest number of accidents. Okay? So we're going to be increasing traffic through an area, and boy, if you're talking about the kids coming home from school, just sit there at that traffic circle for a bit and see who bombs through there. And there's adults too. But I certainly wouldn't want us to think that, these folks are great and we love them. They're good Rock Creek residents. But let's not send disparaging remarks to the folks that are living on the other side, because they're good people too. And I don't run a stop sign. I really don't. I don't speed. I haven't gotten a speeding ticket, and I've had 3 in my life. Okay? So that's just me. I can't speak for the rest of the people, but that's certainly something to be considered. And 7 accidents over a 5-year period, that's nothing is acceptable, but sometimes you have to live with some of this stuff. So those are some of the concerns that I would like to see us consider. Another alternative that I've seen that really grabs people's attention are these stop signs that are lit all the way around. And maybe they could be set up so that they're triggered and start flashing like crazy at you as you approach them. And that may be another alternative, and I've not heard suggested here. But
great, thanks.
I know. Maybe they put a shield on the house side of it, and maybe that could work too. Maybe you could have it focused so it would really just get the traffic that's coming down the middle. A little shield on each side of the, around the things might address that concern. And I wouldn't want flashing lights.
Nobody would.
No, but I'm just looking for other acceptable alternatives, recognizing that we are going to have to spend the $300,000 or whatever it is down at Coal Creek and Rock Creek. I've seen a lot of traffic studies with the things going down there anyway. It's going to happen. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Greg Dieter. I live at 1245 South Boyero Court, right over here. Problems with the survey, problems with the focus of the survey. I think that one of our biggest issues is the basic design of the arterial network of streets. Our ability to cut through here is because it's not being met anywhere else. I think that the discussion about what we should do for Waldona really comes down to the fact that should we close something, close part of it or not, is one discussion. Close Akron, I'm not sure why that was undone, why it was determined that we shouldn't close Akron. Does anybody understand why that decision was made? Just out of curiosity.
Didn't we hear that it just wasn't effective? It didn't really reduce anything.
So, okay. That would make sense. I'd like to verify that, I guess. Because I think the question was raised earlier, how much of this traffic is really just us? How much of it is really cut-through traffic? Volume per day doesn't really tell us who belongs in the neighborhood, who doesn't. To answer that question, I think we need to know I don't know if it's a door-to-door, how many cars do you have? How many trips do they make? Which exit of the neighborhood do they use? Something like that to get some quantitative information about how many drivers we have in our neighborhood. Where are they going? I would assume that people that are over on the Akron side are they're going to use Akron more. Anybody on the 88th side is going to use 88th Street more. It would be interesting to sort of get an idea of how many drivers we have here so that we know what the through traffic really looks like, volume-wise. Because if we do have a lot of through traffic, then we need to talk about what other options for Rock Creek we can have to provide bigger roads that would give alternatives to cutting through Weldona, to getting to Louisville, the high school, the hospital, those types of things. I think would be very helpful in making a good informed decision anyway about this. And the secondary solution, I think discussions about speed mitigation and other options, to do with that is kind of a second question, in my opinion. Some people don't want flashing lights. I got you. I think that would be a real hassle. But, doing other things like the painting the stop sign on the street and, other options to bring people's attention to the stop signs is always a good idea. All right. Thanks, guys.
Hi, I'm another Greg. I'm Greg Wilson. I sort of have a dog in this fight. I used to live from 99 to 2013 on 1249 South Weldona Lane. And actually the people that bought my house are at my work, so I know them. And I've just moved up a little bit. So we moved up onto Akron over up here. So, I kind of get some of the effects of the traffic coming through. But one reason we decided to move was, we were getting up to 2 kids. Now we have 3. And so, it was kind of busy here. Like some other people said, people fly around this turn. The street's naturally just narrow with cars, so it just gets pretty congested. So I guess all I would probably say is I'm with a lot of people maybe understanding a holistic approach, like who is really cutting through on this volume? Is it people up here in my area, or is it a lot of people here in Amherst coming down? Are there other options to, I think another lady mentioned it, opening it up here so they have some access and it just kind of distributes the traffic flow. Let's see. And I was here when they closed this off, but maybe my recollection's getting bad at my old age, but I don't remember it being 3 months. And I thought, I'm trying to remember if it was during the school year when we actually closed this off? Because I thought a lot of the volume didn't go down because a lot of people, they went up and then they didn't realize it was closed and they turned around, so the volume kind of doubled. So, that's just my recollection, but I'm getting old here, so. I won't recommend any solutions, but I feel for the people because this is pretty small, tight road. You got a lot of cars on the street just based on your garage sizes. And so,
Good evening. I'm John Mullen, and I and my wife Kathy live at 1250 South Boyero Court, which is there. And I had a couple of questions, but Alex, when you were talking about the gate, I've always aspired to live in a gated community, so that could be really brilliant. Yes, but my my mortgage won't allow that. I had 2 issues, but 2 questions first. Greg asked one about why the removal of the closure at Akron after a short period of time, and I had that question too. The other one is the accident data at Weldona and 88th. To me, what's critical is time of day, because it seems like the flow of traffic, I'm now retired, so I'm in and out and up and down all hours of the day and evening, and it seems that the huge volume of traffic is rush hour types of things, especially related to schools. So the accident data, my initial, and when you said that, would be, geez, that's probably early in the morning, kids going to school and making a left-hand turn. But to me, that's a matter of curiosity. We're all neighbors in this neighborhood, and I don't think the Weldona folks are imagining the traffic issues, because when, Alex, you spoke to the data, it appeared that from the earliest survey to the most recent survey, the traffic has virtually doubled. And so that's not people imagining things, that's volume of traffic. And so we all live and we all have the same concerns of quality of life, and we have the concerns for safety that my neighbor Mike mentioned with his children. Before Mike, we have the benefit of a 23-year history of having lived. We're original owners as well. The family that lived in Mike's house before were older, and there were multiple ambulance visits per week because he had a heart condition. And so my primary concern about closure at 88th has everything to do with safety. Because if you were to require emergency vehicles, thankfully we've only had one significant fire event, to my knowledge, in Rock Creek in the 23 years we've lived here, and that was on the other side of Colton Road. But God forbid that should happen, and an emergency vehicle needs to respond to either property or life emergency. And obviously, Mike's daughter is one of those potential statistics. I would think that that would be a major concern, because if you're going to reroute traffic through the roundabout at Rock Creek Parkway, up to Coal Creek, and then down Weldona because you've closed it off at 88th, that's precious minutes. So lives are more important than property, but all of those things are valuable to us because property values have come up during the evening. The other question I had was, you had mentioned, I think, Kevin, that there's going to be a new Anderson application, and my question was, is that going to be from the same developer with a revised, or is that going to be a new application?
Let me just take that, because an application has been submitted to the town,
right.
So the town board members really can't discuss that application.
You're sworn to secrecy. No worries.
But it's the same developer that has submitted.
Thanks. Yes. It would be lovely if open space was open space and park and all these things, so that the kids that can't play in the street might have a place to go without having to go down to the dog park or the bicycle park. We have a lot of wonderful amenities here. We've got great neighbors, and I think if my ox was being gored, I'd be upset too. And I don't want this to be an issue of Boyero folks just simply being affected by a dimension of convenience. To my way of thinking, the most important dimension here is the flow of traffic at those most congested times of day, and what sorts of amelioration can take place to satisfy all the neighbors and contribute to all of our concerns for safety. Those people who live on Weldona, for their children if they want to play, the rest of us, aging population, does that ring a bell for anybody, might have something that could go wrong. And I'd hate to be one of those people that had something go wrong and then all of a sudden can't get to emergency service. So I think that if we view it as a neighborhood issue rather than a us versus them, we'll all be well served with whatever we come up with. And I trust that your folks' hearts are in the right place. Certainly everybody's ears are in the right place. We're just trying to look at solutions that'll work for everybody. I think a closure at 88th is going to have unintended consequences. Thanks.
Hey, Alex, on your survey, you didn't include an option of whether folks would like to see a traffic circle there or not. And
no.
You're the traffic circle king. How come you didn't include that on there?
Right. We didn't include that as an option.
Because we have discussed that in the past, of potentially putting a traffic circle there.
There or down further to the south.
Okay.
As a possible alternative, which would be similar to the right in, right out. So the Weldona people can make a right out and then make a left at the at the roundabout, a U-turn at the roundabout, so they can still go to the north.
Yeah, so the traffic circle makes sense, but the right out for them doesn't make sense because then they have to go all the way down to the other traffic circle and back. So it would have been nice to see that option on there, just to get the feedback from the folks.
The
if they like
issues
that.
with that is that, it's right there, you're putting a traffic circle, so you have to widen 88th, so you're coming closer to at least that one home that's right there on 88th.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
Good evening, Ken Lish. I'm on 1326 South Idalia Court. I'm right here on the corner of Idalia and Waldona. I'm across the street from Neil. I think his comments summed up my biggest fears incredibly well, that it really comes down to a safety issue. I have a new son. I have dogs. We're out walking all the time. This corner right here is incredibly dangerous. It's a blind corner. People come flying around it all the time. I've seen near misses, both myself and others walking. So that's definitely something that at the end of the day must absolutely be addressed no matter what solution there is. But to get to my other points, I don't envy the position you guys are in. I think what we're all here to say is we want everything to be as safe as possible. I hear the comments from everybody on Boyero. I respect the access to emergency vehicles. Our biggest concern here is the speed and volume and our safety. I think at the absolute bare minimum, if we don't close anything down, that the speed tables need to be the standard, not the speed bumps. We all know that with those tiny little speed bumps, people don't slow down. They continue over them. Yeah, it might have an impact on their shocks, but it doesn't have a big enough effect to slow people down. The speed tables that are much longer and wider, that slows people down to a much greater extent. So looking at just the pure safety of everybody on this road, I think that's got to be the bare minimum. But I think the best ideas that I've heard is taking a more holistic view of everything and working with the Anderson developers when they come forward and seeing what they can discuss. As we open up more traffic up here and have more egress and options, I think we're going to see this become less of an issue. There's a lot of unknowns. We've heard that. We have no idea what's going to happen with Zaharias. We don't know exactly what's going to happen on Anderson. We could see a lot more traffic coming through depending on what pops up there. So I would encourage the board to at least try one of the temporary solutions, whether it's closing here, whether it's closing here, whether it's closing in the middle. We have data for what it is right now. To understand what's going to work, we just have to collect some other data. So whether it's 3 months, there's been a lot that's changed since this. So I heard that there wasn't a lot of change, but that was however many years ago, 20-ish years ago now. So let's do something, track the data, see if it works. If not, then we discuss other solutions. But I think something is better than nothing at this point. So thank you very much.
Alex, another question. On the speed mounds, I'll call them. You had said that you can reduce traffic by 20 to 50%. Is that true? And how do you come up with that? Because that's 50%.
That's what the literature says. If you do it in a situation like this, where you're putting the speed humps every 300 to 400 speed mounds.
Thank you.
Every 300 to 400 feet, that it becomes such a nuisance. People don't like to do that, so they would try to find other routes, and that's just what other research around the country has shown.
Okay.
Okay, I'm Janine Dickerhoff, and I also live on Mesa Court. And a comment about the survey, and I know I put that in my survey. We were gone for 2 weeks and got back at 10 o'clock on Wednesday night, the 31st. Fortunately, we looked at our mail the next morning and saw the survey that had to be in that day. So, the timing of it wasn't the best either, I don't think. But, there's a lot of things to keep in mind. I think the health care is really important. Again, we're also senior citizens. And, it's not just a Vista. It's also Good Sam, which has to be accessed also by ambulances from this area. So, the health care is extremely important. I think one other thing that makes cutting across, to 88th through Weldona is because we've had so much construction on McCaslin, which hasn't been mentioned, which we still have, with this big circle that they're making there. And I don't know when that's going to be done, but that's been going on forever. And I think a lot of people try to avoid going through there because it is difficult. And it was very difficult when they were building the cross. And even after they got that done, it was such a mess with the timing on the, the stoplights and all of that, that I know I would try to avoid it, trying to get to Louisville or, out, into the other areas. I wouldn't want to go down McCaslin. So I think that's another area as well that has probably made people try to avoid, going out that way, especially, in the days trying to get to work or to school or whatever. So anyway, I hope you really consider the whole neighborhoods. And I agree, we're all in this trying to figure out for the most safe way to do it and, to help the neighbors as well in that area. And I think closure and the right turns those are going to be very difficult. Some of these other options might be better. So again, you do have a big job, and a tough job trying to figure this out. So thank you.
Janine, since you brought it up, Alex put you on the spot. What's your best estimate for the opening day on our McCaslin Circle?
It was supposed to be the end of May. We got back from vacation and it wasn't. So
it's when it's connected to Main Street.
No, forget Main Street.
Usable.
Up and down.
Just up and down.
Get through
It'll probably be third or fourth week of June.
Great. Thanks, Alex.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Janine.
Of 2017, correct?
Kathy Carty-Mullen, 1250 South Boyero Court. Thank you very much for hearing everyone. And we're all neighbors. I'd like to continue to be able to say that with a smile. And I think we all have concerns, and I love kids. I used to be the PE teacher, and I feel for them not being able to play somewhere. There's no parks really nearby that they can just go to, and the traffic has increased along Weldona, so I hear you. But closing 88th at Weldona is not something that I'm going to ascribe to because of safety, for one, for convenience, and I have to say, convenience is important. You're not going around past everybody, go back around and in and out of the neighborhood several times a day, which I don't know if the traffic would go down or not. But I have an idea that hasn't been explored that might help consider, and that is, I'm a solar person. So what if we had a solar-activated gate for my husband that is motion-activated also, somewhere in the middle, and it sounds like at the Akron cul-de-sac would be big enough, where it's motion activated to allow one car at a time. Those high school kids would not stand for cutting through, waiting one car at a time. So they would go somewhere else, but it would still allow people to use both entrances, and you could have it shut off and have it open during low times. And the people along Weldona will tell you when the low times are. And if they have kids that want to play, put it down. Just a thought. So, and I also am looking forward to when Coal Creek, I guess this is Coal Creek here, opens so that we have more access. That street's been waiting for years to open to, it's 4 lanes, to go down to the community. And I believe we have Campus Drive Bridge that's definitely going to happen, isn't it, for the town center?
It's being discussed. But
It's not a... Okay, that would be great for the high school kids. You just put the policeman right there, and that would pay for everything, all those fines. Anyhow, thank you for listening to us. Hopefully we can all come up with a solution everybody's happy with. And one more thing, the Zaharias property would be a fabulous option to keep as open space and a space somewhere in there for the kids to play. It's right there, it's natural.
Talk to Ken about that.
Great.
Okay, I'm Judy. I live on Weldona Way, right in the middle. I'm just going to read some of the things that I submitted. Residents moved into this. I've been here since 2000. I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren in the neighborhood. Not in this side, on the other side. The residents moved into the neighborhood with the understanding that the houses would be residential streets and not travel-through streets. I'm not going to. People have covered most of about the traffic problem. My concern is when it's developed on the other side of 88th. Those people are going to cut through on Weldona to get to Coal Creek, and that's my concern. I don't think I have children on either side of me in houses, 3 on one side, 2 on the other. None of them play in the street on Weldona. I mean, that would be, silly, but like they can on these side streets. But there is a concern for me that the amount of traffic coming off of 88th to cut through to access the Coal Creek going into the city center. And I just think that is where it's going to happen. I've seen a lot of changes. I go Monday, Wednesday to the Louisville Rec Center, and it's changed a lot. I can't even get out of it a lot of times. So I'm really concerned about it, and I think we need to try to keep the lifestyle of the neighborhood, the way it is, and that's what we bought the property for. So I had not thought about this closing off at Akron, and I think that's a good idea, if that's what it takes, just so it's not a through thoroughfare between 88th and Coal Creek is my concern. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Burton McKenzie. I live at in the middle of Weldona, next to Judy. 3 kids. We got here. Bought our house about 2 years ago, knowing that it was a pretty busy street, definitely. But we started to get concerned when we heard about the property across the street, the prospect of that getting developed, and seeing where the traffic patterns have been just in the last 2 years. I don't see that improving if that. Although the 88th is going to have to get some. If that goes in, 88th is going to be a nightmare. So. I'm pretty much a solutions guy, and it seems like this is like too much. It's too many houses to have either one end or the other cut off. Or closed. I'm just wondering whether there's not more discussion about even the prospect. I'm not even sure if it's even possible, but I know it's mentioned in here. But why not just? It seems like everybody on this side wants to keep 88th access, and everybody on this side wants to keep this access. But if you close it, is it even possible to do a close it off in the middle right here somewhere on Weldona, and so that it bifurcates the traffic patterns? I don't even know if that's possible or what it would look like.
Anything's possible. I think one of the issues you're going to have is for the traffic that is not familiar with the area coming in with trucks, delivery trucks. If they get to a point there, how are they going to? If they make a mistake, how do they get out? And so we'd have to look at a mid-block somewhere in the middle, how you design that so to allow for people that make mistakes to be able to get out. And then
Gotcha.
So I mean that's something that the committee or the board wants us to look at. We take a look at how we would do that and work with the community on how to do that, because it would be affecting some houses.
And then increasing, other access points that's been mentioned, but I run through here a lot to this connection right here, and I've always seen that this is a dead. I know this neighborhood probably wouldn't like it, nothing mentioned, but that's an obvious exit point right there. If there's going to be a light right there, I don't know for that neighborhood up there. Those combination of potential solutions are. Definitely something needs to happen. I'm not sure why do nothing is even a choice on that questionnaire, given all the many years of the issues. So anyway, that's fine. Thank you.
Janine Dickerhoff again on Mesa Court. Just one thing I forgot to say. You mentioned about putting in another roundabout. And, we've got a lot of roundabouts already, and we're getting that big one on McCaslin, which is huge. And I'm not sure it just seems like there's a lot of issues with the roundabouts. The people they don't slow down, they don't stop. The right of way, it's hard. I don't know what's going to happen with the one we have on McCaslin coming. I have concerns about that, I know. And I don't know, again, I assume those are actually, they're actually 2-lane roundabouts, correct? Okay, because you can't really tell, from looking at them, the way they're building them. But anyway, just a caution about that, to throw that out. I see so much, and I do a lot of driving in the neighborhood and have for years, back and forth everywhere. And it's just, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous in those, so.
Guy Romer at 1234 South Waldona Lane, right here. So I live in this cul-de-sac right here, and this hasn't been discussed much tonight, but we've been talking about these stop signs, but there's a stop sign right here as well. And people always go blasting through this stop sign. And that's how they get up their rate of speed to go around this corner super fast. So, we marked out the do nothing option on the survey because that's not an option in our opinion. But probably, a speed mound here and one over here at least, to try to still give access through the neighborhood, but to slow down the people that actually go through it. We did pick the closure option as well. We picked both, but given what I've heard here tonight, I don't know if that's the best option now, given safety and health concerns. But the fact is, people come flying around this corner just as much as they go flying through these stop signs as well. So, but my kids, they're told they can't leave this cul-de-sac because they get anywhere near this stop sign, they may get hurt. So, thanks.
Dulcie Brown again, sorry. So everybody's talked about the ambulance going to the hospital. Isn't there some kind of, I visited a friend one time who lived in a neighborhood where the ambulances could go through, but the cars couldn't go through. And I don't remember whether it was a gate or whether it was one of those, those things where you go across and you tear your tires up, but the ambulances could push the button and it goes down, but something. So that way everybody who has health problems would be happy, but then it would keep everybody else out. So I think there is another option where ambulances can go through, but I don't know how expensive it would be.
Any other public comment?
My name is Ying Zhuang. I live on Boyero Court, right by Waldona, right there. Just 2 comments on the survey. First of all, I feel like it's not giving enough time, mostly because my husband was also on travel, and without a friendly neighbor remind us that check your mail, there's a survey going on, I could have easily missed the June 1st deadline, which is probably a week, from where it was distributed. And the second of all, looking at the survey, unfortunately or embarrassingly, we mark do nothing, mostly because we simply look at survey, look at how it was described, and the problem was illustrated in such a way that, it says, it has a hypothesis that people cut through, the Waldona to get to 88. But then there's the data way back in 2006 saying it makes very little differences. By blocking off that section, then, as a physicist, background, I would ask, but then data doesn't support the hypothesis, so that's not a problem. And that's why I would say, okay, then maybe just do nothing, because I don't exactly know where the problem is and where exactly the problem comes from. And listen to everybody here. As close as, we live to Waldona, I can see it's a very dangerous street. So I never have my 2 children go out near the corner. And in fact, my son and daughter just line up. There's a bus stop right there by the Waldona on the peak hours in the morning. there was more than 10 kids line up almost every day to wait for the school buses. And I always ask them, stay on the sidewalk, because I was there with them. The thing is, I can see there might be a problem given the 7 incidents, which sounds pretty scary. The thing is, when I look at it, this 7 incidents, is that I take it as a problem because it's much higher compared to the average in the neighborhood. So first of all, I would ask, is this really a problem? I mean, the traffic gonna go up, the incident gonna go up as much as we don't like it. This might happen no matter what. But I mean, we can kind of sort it out with, I don't know, giving my background more scientific way, just by compare all the neighborhood data. And if we identify, yes, this is a problem. Second, I will ask a question, where does the problem come from? As much as people kind of talk about, there are people admit they take it as a shortcut, they cut through the neighborhood. But then on the same time, they were also, some other data and kind of tell me it's not exactly that. So honestly, I'm a little bit confused because I'm getting a lot of inconsistent information. And that actually confuses me. I don't even know whether the problem is because people at this neighborhood, on that neighborhood, just driving high speed through the street, or is that simply we are being the bad residents within this block? We were driving crazy. I don't even get the answer from that. So the thing is, I just feel like there is very little information to kind of give me a background, mostly because I probably only here for a year. And there are also the noise coming from the new development potentially going to come in, have a big impact on 88th Street. We might have a problem today. We might have an even bigger problem in the future. But the thing is, I'm not even getting the idea, are we going to solve the problem what we have now? Or are we even solving the problem that we look into the next year also? And if we have a problem, where does the problem come from? Is that from the residents, the high school kids was living on all the other block? Or is that even the high school kids that living just right there? Because the way I see it, without knowing the source of the problem, I really cannot come up with a solution. And to say, okay, I do nothing, or I block here, or I block there, or block anywhere in the middle, because the thing is, the high school kid, the bad driver, could be living right here, right there, right there, right there. And the thing is,
you see them drive through. They're not only. Some of them do have the cul-de-sac.
Right. So I'm not kind of try to vote down any of the comment, but the thing is, what I'm really asking for is probably as a resident, give me a little bit more information, maybe help me understand. There are people, seeing obviously the people like high school just taking a shortcut and driving very high speed through the street. Then I will ask 2 things. One is, if we look back on the 7 incidents, we probably can identify who was the driver. And then, I don't know if those are the accessible information to the public. And then the second thing is, obviously the victim is probably the resident in the neighborhood. And they might give us some idea on where are the problem come from. And then we can go ahead and start address whether we are going to close down the road or speed. I mean, it sounds to me it is a problem, but the thing is, it's just not quite clear to me about the solution we are providing, and the information we are providing is allowing us to make a decision here. Because the thing is, you hear a lot of inconsistent information saying, close it down here, it doesn't make any differences. Then I don't understand why, honestly, because if it's the through traffic, there was a problem, then why close down one end? Doesn't really cut it down, it doesn't really resolve it. So I think there were just a lot of contradicting information that I hear today at the town. And as much as I like to understand it, I just don't want to rush into a decision today.
These things don't come easy, so it's
right.
It's something that we will take back to the board, and the board will have a good discussion on this. But thank you very much for your comments.
And just a point of clarification, we're not making a decision tonight. The purpose of tonight was to gather information from residents, to go through the survey results, and we'll be making a recommendation to the board, and then the board will ultimately make the decision. So,
well, there are some decisions we can make tonight, like directing, like painting the stop on the street. I do want to provide some short-term direction around a education program. I don't think the board would need to think about whether or not we're going to paint stop on the street, and so things like that.
Right. I was talking about a more permanent solution.
Okay.
A more.
I think, and cutting the trees, Alex, that came up, that the trees, are they hanging over the signs that say not for through traffic? So definitely cutting those back and making sure that all the signs that we put out there are visible. Anything else?
This is not directly related to the Weldona cut-through traffic, but it is related to the Weldona 88th Street intersection. One of the craziest things, if you're coming north on 88th and you want to turn left on Weldona, whether you've given a signal and have plenty of time or not, whoever's behind you that wants to go straight is going to whip by you on the right-hand side on the shoulder that doesn't exist. So there's no left turn lane to get to Weldona. So if there is an oncoming car and you don't want to whip in there, you got to just hold tight and hope you don't get rear-ended as the guy rushes up on your rear end. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that we make a wider spot there, but it might not be a bad idea to give people a way to get around if we can't get a left turn lane to go into Weldona, because people right now are making their own bypass, whether it's there or not.
Very quick. Chris, you were talking about unobscuring any signs that said local traffic only. And I know, Mark, when we had our conversation a few months ago, you were talking about the same thing in terms of no commercial through traffic on Rock Creek Parkway. But after we had that conversation, it opened my eyes, and I see stuff going through there all the time. So signage effectiveness may be an area to look at, because you can put signage there, but if people see something this big as opposed to this big, then maybe it'll have a different impact. And I don't even notice those things, truth be told. So somehow or another, to draw drivers' attention to those might be a helpful assist.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think to that point, one of the reasons we had regarding the commercial traffic on Rock Creek Parkway was there was a comment that Sergeant Chamberlain made at a previous board meeting or traffic and safety committee meeting about enforcement and ticketing, and they wouldn't be able to ticket the vehicles if the signs aren't up. So the signs needed to be up first before tickets could be written. But it's a good point, so thank you. Alex, I just have one question. Do we have any data about, we heard a number of comments about access to a Vista Hospital, regarding what is the longest trip time for a resident in any part of Superior, whether it's in Sagamore, Original Town, or the southwest corner of Rock Creek? What's the longest it would take for somebody to actually get to the emergency room?
Calculated, I don't know the data offhand. I can maybe ask the hospital or some of the ambulance providers if they have the longest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is pretty close compared to other areas.
Right.
I mean, even if you go around, you look at some of the areas south of Colton, pretty far away compared to this area. But I don't have that data.
Yeah, I was just curious if any sort of study or any, if the hospital keeps that data. If we could just look into it and ask, I would be curious to know what the longest average trip time would be.
Sorry, not to complicate, but since you raised that issue, it's not always just ambulance drivers that get you to the hospital. I sliced open my finger doing gardening work and needed stitches, and I drove myself because I didn't need $300 ambulance bill. So it's everybody getting there on their own, as well as waiting for emergency vehicles as well. Thanks.
Sure.
I know it's getting late, so I'll try to be brief. My name is Keith Martin. I live on 1204 South Weldona Lane, right here at the very end. Most of my neighbors block my driveway when they park at the top of the cul-de-sac because it's kind of a tangential entry. But looking at these options here, I had kind of cast my vote, if you will, for closing at 88th. Not really because it affects me that much, because we don't really get a lot of traffic up at the end of the street. We're fortunate, except for folks that are lost. But, you know, I know these folks have got to be hating it. So to kind of, you know, be on the side with them, I cast that vote. And after thinking about it, you know, and thinking about emergency access and things like that, you know, I can see why that may not make sense. But one thing that I know that is true, that if you want to change someone's behavior, you make it, you hit them where it hurts. And at least for me, if you hit me where it hurts, it's in the wallet. So I think most people would agree that if you make it cost money, then, you know, that's one effective way to change behavior. So I didn't vote for this. I didn't write this down. And my initial reaction to it was, you know, that's kind of silly, but this reduced speed limit to 15 miles an hour, after thinking it through a little bit, it makes sense. If you reduce the speed limit down to 15 miles an hour and then you jack up the ticket price for, you know, going above the posted speed limit, make it 2-3 times what the normal citation would be. Most of the high school kids that live over here, that tear through here at 40 miles an hour when I'm waiting at the bus stop for my 7-year-old daughter, their parents will say, if you get a ticket, I'm going to pull your license. So it's worth looking at that option, I think, at least. It should be relatively cheap. And I think if you jack that ticket price up, you know, you're going to start getting people to change their behavior. And it might not cut down the volume, but it will certainly cut down the speed. And I know for me, I can't really handle another speeding ticket myself. So, so you know, just from a point stand, you know, double the points that they would get. You know, there's several things I think we could do there. And a 15 mile an hour on a residential street, especially a high volume one, wouldn't really be that big of a deal. I've tried to avoid going down the rest of Weldona since the last town hall because I know how much it means to my neighbors. But when you see that silver Accord pass by, that's me. But I still do go that way. And I think, you know, cutting it down to 15 miles an hour, at least for those folks, and the people gunning it from stop sign to stop sign, I mean, you know, I've actually pulled over to let people go by me. But the people that do that, you know, maybe some of that will reduce. But if it's a pretty cheap thing to try out, then, you know, I would say maybe we can take another look at that. I would just have one last word of caution. Don't do it until September. Because if any data you try to record between now and September, you're going to miss all of that high school traffic. And there's a lot of it. And my kids are going to be there one day, so, you know, I'm not throwing stones at those folks. But, you know, I used to be a high schooler myself, and that's where the majority of my tickets came from. But anyway, it's worth another look, I think.
Alex, is it, I thought we had a discussion with the town attorney not too long ago about reducing speed limits, and I thought that it wasn't as easy as we think it is to reduce a speed limit and increase the fine for speeding. Do you know anything about that?
Well, going under 25 miles an hour, I think there are some issues with that. Town attorney is on let you know. The actual fines themselves, you have to adopt an ordinance, and it'll probably have to be across the board, not just in this area. It has to be town-wide to increase the fines for speeding.
Yeah.
And maybe it could be a statutory thing, whether it's set by the state law.
Yep. Okay. Because I think we had this discussion about around El Dorado K8 that we wanted to reduce the speeds around there, and I thought she said it wasn't that easy to do, but I could be remembering wrong.
One more idea. I like that idea. I really don't like the idea of 15. That seems too slow. But how about the idea of a non-school school zone? Through traffic during these times, speed limit's 20. Might be easier to get, to sell. I don't know if that would be an option. But during, prime times, we reduce the speed limit to 20, flashing lights, additional fines. If that's an option, maybe that would be a good solution to help that.
Do traffic signals for school zones, does that have to be within a certain area of schools? That's a good idea, actually.
That's true.
So what difference does that make?
Very good point. Another good point is that enforcement has to be part of any of these solutions, Yeah, right. So I think, me personally, I think that the speed tables, not humps, is probably going to be the most effective solution. A sign is you're on your own, we trust you to stop for a stop sign. A table is going to force you to keep it down. Yep. And I think that that's probably the best to help us mitigate the speeds. I don't know how many we would need to put in. Taking out either stop signs or speed tables, but putting in multiple speed tables through the neighborhood would probably be the simplest and most cost-effective solution, in my mind, anyway.
Okay. Any other public comment? You
guys have anything else?
Do you want to talk about it?
Sure.
Okay. So, I'll go first. My first priority is protecting the safety of our children in this neighborhood and throughout Superior. I've got 2 little ones, and we're fortunate we live on a cul-de-sac, so I don't have to deal with people speeding by. But I certainly hear and appreciate, all the concerns about not allowing kids to ride their bikes in the streets. I also understand and hear the concerns about access to the hospital. I hear Mike Jaramillo's concern about having an allergic, a child with a severe allergy. I have a son with a severe nut allergy. We carry an EpiPen everywhere we go, and it's a very, scary prospect. That said, we live south of Colton, and I think that it would still take me longer to get to the hospital than it would if we closed off that neighborhood at 88th and Weldona to just come down Rock Creek. I think all of us live in very close proximity to the hospital. So I don't think that is really the most compelling issue in my mind. I think we're still very close. That said, I don't pretend to have all the answers here, and I really appreciate everybody coming out here, speaking during public comment, answering the surveys, sending us emails. It really helps us kind of navigate this quandary, because at the end of the day, we're all neighbors. We all live here. We love this town. We want it to be as good as it can be. I certainly want to do no harm, and I want to preserve the quality of life. So, I'm leaning towards, one of the things that the board has talked about is, as an overall objective of the board is, to be more responsive to the community and to be nimble and to actually kind of implement pilot programs, things of that nature, so we can kind of try things out to see if this is actually a palatable solution or not. Because I think with a situation like we're dealing with tonight, doing a traffic signal, spending that kind of money seems way premature. What I'd be more in favor of is doing some sort of temporary closure or some pilot program where we could see how things go. I think we definitely need to do it, if we do it at all, during the school year, because that's when the kids are obviously gunning down Weldona on the way to Monarch and back. I'd certainly be open to doing a pilot program where we would close off Weldona at 88th. I think the idea of kind of bifurcating the neighborhood in the middle of it seems just strange. And there was a comment about kind of connectivity of the neighborhood, and I just really disagree about connectivity. We live in at least the residents of Rock Creek here, we're in a planned subdivision, and the way it was designed is that, we've got some major arteries, and then they kind of funnel out into, various pocket neighborhoods. And, I don't think that, connectivity is the top priority, because I think the unintended consequence of that is that you end up splitting neighborhoods in half. You have people that are using streets that weren't necessarily intended to be cut-throughs as cut-throughs, and then we have safety concerns for our kids. So I would personally much rather be inconvenienced in terms of the time that it would take to get someplace and have safer streets for our kids than to have easier access to the high school or to Safeway or wherever we're going to go. I also think that Neil Shaw raised a good point about why do people who are not necessarily directly affected by this get a vote? And I think when you look at the data, obviously most of the responses came from people who live on the Weldona corridor, but the people who live outside of that general area were all in favor of, generally speaking, doing nothing and keeping it as is, and that's because they use it as a cut through. And I think that's kind of evident of the problem that we have. So, my recommendation right now is that the board consider, and again, we should do this in another public forum with the opportunity to make more public comments, but I'd be in favor of doing a temporary closure. I don't think the speed bumps are really going to do it. I think the kids, especially if the kids are gunning through to Monarch, it's going to be almost like a game. They're just going to be ramming those speed humps and speed mounds. So I think a temporary closure at Weldona for 3 to 6 months is a reasonable experiment to see if that increases or decreases the problem. But if we actually talk about what a major problem I see kind of in the future is, I do think that the turn off Coal Creek onto Rock Creek Parkway, I think that that's a scary left turn. And if we're going to be talking about a light, that's where we need to have a light. And I understand that that's a significant expense, but that is, I've done that turn a number of times, and it's always, I think that's just a problem with Rock Creek Parkway in general. We've got a 4-lane highway basically going through a residential subdivision, and with 35-mile-an-hour speed limits, people are speeding on that road. So whether if we're going to talk about Rock Creek Parkway, maybe we talk about making it a 2-lane road and reducing the speed limits to making that a safer turn. But keeping it as is right now, that's a problem. But we're here to talk about Weldona right now. I think a pilot program, 3 to 6 months, closing off 88th temporarily, including part of the school year, would be something that I'd certainly be open to exploring.
Well, we haven't discussed closing off at Akron and 88th to see what would happen. I haven't been a big fan of closing anything, but it's certainly not my decision to make. It's the town as a whole. But when these discussions first started, I wasn't a big fan of that. I am a big fan, though, of exploring some of these other options. It's the very easy things to do. I guess we call it the low-hanging fruit. Cut the trees in front of the signs, make sure that's all visible. But I think I like the idea of putting in those speed mounds, those tables, or what have you. If it truly does reduce traffic 20 to 50%, I think that's a good start. And then if we can put up a radar sign or two, or even in my neighborhood on Eaton Circle, we don't have a lot of traffic. We do get some cars that go fast, and it's a small street. But some parents have put these little signs out on the sidewalk or just in the gutter that says "Children at Play." And when I think it's so visible, when you see that, it really makes you stop and think, because it has a little child image on that sign. I thought, wow, if that's not impactful, I don't know what is. So I think little things like that, instead of going down the road of closures again and all that, I think we should try something a little bit different. And if it doesn't work, then maybe the extreme of closing off the street is the solution. But I think there's too many other things that we should try. More patrols. We just recently hired a new deputy that is focused on just speeding and that kind of stuff. And I think that if maybe we have that person, can we be in an unmarked car? If it's having a visible car says sheriff on the side. Maybe we have an unmarked car that they can be in and sit on one of the side streets. But again, I think those little things are easy to implement. We can certainly try them out, and if it doesn't work, then I would say that maybe we do really need to look at maybe closing off one of those streets, and then what's the choice, which end? So that would be my choice. Oh, slip lane, you know, that's something we've also talked about. When you're exiting, making a left turn, or it could be when you're making a left onto Weldona, we've talked about widening the street, and we have the ability to do that a little bit, but putting in a slip lane so that when you turn left, it's not so much in the morning the traffic coming from Monarch, but it's the traffic going the other way. And if you can get in the slip lane and stage yourself, there's enough time then you can merge into traffic. So maybe there's another option there. Certainly doesn't decrease the amount of traffic coming back into Weldona at the end of the day, but I think there's other things that we can try that might reduce the traffic a little bit.
First, thank you for everybody who came, filled out the survey, provided comment. I also live on a pretty busy street, directly across from Wildflower, and frankly, one of the reasons why I'm up here, why I became engaged in the community, was because I was really unhappy with the traffic that was zipping on West Torrey's Peak, and I tortured Alex for a couple of years and started to get involved, and here I am on a number of issues. So traffic and safety is one of the most important things to me, absolutely. So I am, I was being a bit flippant or sarcastic when I said no option is not an option, or no change is not an option, but I do mean it. I mean, there are legitimate safety issues. 7 accidents, as far as I'm concerned, is 7 too many. One kid that's driving carelessly at 35 miles an hour is just not acceptable, and we have to do something about it. Chris, I do like what you said about addressing some of the things around low-hanging fruit. We could do that quickly, at low cost, and without protracted, lengthy conversations and board meetings and future public comment. Let's cut the trees. Let's talk to Sergeant Chamberlain about additional enforcement. Let's paint stop on a street and see if that's helpful. Things that are, the signs. I have one of those. I personally went out and bought one of those little yellow guys with the flag. If you ever drive by my house, you might see it out. It's got a big dent because somebody thought it'd be funny to hit the yellow guy, which is amazing. And the flag was stolen as well, so the flag is no longer hanging there. But these little community things that you do, I do think are important. The signs, drive like your kids live here. Those yellow guys, putting them out, asking people, even though Sergeant Chamberlain personally asked me to stop doing it, I give people the slow down sign in front of my street. It is at risk of causing a confrontation, and so I'm not encouraging anybody in the community to do it. But as members of the community, I do think we all need to be accountable for ourselves and our kids. And if you recognize one of your neighbor's kids driving 35 miles an hour, maybe a knock on the door to let their mom and dad know that their kid is driving recklessly is necessary. Some of the longer term ideas around building the speed mounds, I think I also like those ideas. I'd like to do something like that before we make a investment around closing off roads. I heard a lot. I was sort of thinking that a closing road would make sense. I heard some great, really meaningful comments tonight. I think before we rush into doing something like that, I'm very worried about the safety, very worried about the unintended consequence. So I think we need to think long and hard about doing that even on a temporary 2 or 3 month basis. But some of the other things, again, around the speed mounds. The other idea that came up late and was very successful on my street is expanding the school zone. It's a mystery to me why a school zone is only within a few hundred yards of a school. Kids don't just show up a couple hundred yards away from a school. They commute there. And so I would like to look at expanding that school zone. And if we can make that a school zone, I think it's a great idea. It was very helpful on West Torrey's Peak. And it lowers the speed limit, and it does, I believe, double or even triple the cost of the fine. And we've seen, and I've noticed a couple people have been pulled over, and one of the commenters comments, that's a mistake you only make once, because those fines are going to be pretty hefty. So That's also something, Alex, I'd love to see if that's an actual option. So again, thank you, everybody who provided comment, and from a longer term, we'll make sure that, and it's also interesting around the survey, I recognize there were some good comments on the science behind the survey. So thank you for your patience around that. It was perhaps not as scientific as we would have liked with enough time and enough data, and maybe we unintentionally created some bias by hand delivering on Weldona, and we could have given folks time. But the most important thing was that we got the feedback from the community, and I'm comfortable with that feedback, particularly for those that are most impacted on and around Weldona. So thank you for that, and thank you, Alex, for you and the team for doing.
Would you want me to send out people that didn't respond, or at least the ones in that neighborhood?
I think, Alex,
you have enough. You have a lot.
I think for now, we've got a 90% accuracy rating. I don't know. I made that up.
You got a gauge of the opinions.
Right. I think with 99 responses, I think we definitely got the pulse of the community here, and frankly, I think we learned a little bit about the survey science as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.